8 months after being erased from their lives, I thought I was free. The silence had become my sanctuary. No demanding calls, no guilt trips, no requests for money disguised as family obligations. I'd built something real in this small coastal town, something that belonged only to me. But when that envelope arrived yesterday, demanding $14,000 for my brother's college future, I realized the devastating truth: I was never family to them. I was just a bank account they'd forgotten to empty. My name is Emily Carter, and for 8 months, I've been learning what it means to exist without the weight of family expectations crushing my chest. The morning light filters through my apartment window here in Seaside, Maine, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors I chose myself. Everything in this space belongs to me: the navy blue couch I saved 3 months for, the coffee table made from driftwood I found on the beach, the books arranged not by obligation but by genuine interest. It's a far cry from the suffocating beige walls of my childhood home in Havenbrook, Ohio, where every corner held memories of being overlooked. At 7:15 each morning, I walk the quarter-mile to North Shore Strategies, the local consulting firm where I've managed to carve out something resembling a career. The salt air fills my lungs, and for those precious 15 minutes, I remember what peace feels like. My colleagues here know me as the quiet one who actually listens during meetings, who stays late to perfect proposals, who brings homemade cookies to office birthdays. They don't know I'm practicing being someone worthy of attention. The silence from Ohio has been deafening. Not a single text message asking how I'm adjusting to life in a new state. No phone calls wondering if I found work, if I'm eating enough, if the apartment I rented sight unseen turned out to be livable. Nothing. For 8 months, my phone has remained blissfully free of the familiar guilt-inducing buzz that once governed my days. I should feel liberated, and part of me does. There's something intoxicating about grocery shopping without mentally calculating how much I can spare to send home, about making weekend plans without wondering if I'll need to cancel them for another family crisis that somehow always required my financial intervention, about sleeping through the night without my phone buzzing at 11:30 with another emergency that could wait until morning but somehow never did. But in the quiet moments when I'm washing dishes for one, when I pass families walking the beach together, when the elderly woman next door mentions her daughter visiting from Portland, the liberation curdles into something heavier. Because being forgotten by strangers is one thing. Being erased by the people who raised you feels like drowning in reverse, like being pulled up from water you didn't know you needed to breathe. I've started keeping a journal, writing down small victories. Made partner laugh at lunch meeting today. Neighbor invited me for coffee. Finished entire book without interruption. These moments matter now in ways they never did before, when my worth was measured solely in dollar signs and availability for crisis management. The apartment grows cold in the evenings, even with the heat turned up. I've learned to fill the silence with cooking shows and true crime podcasts, anything to drown out the echo of my own thoughts. Sometimes I catch myself reaching for my phone to call Mom, to share something funny that happened at work, or ask for her advice about whether the strange noise my car makes is worth worrying about. Then I remember I don't exist to them anymore. The worst part isn't the absence of their voices. It's the absence of any acknowledgement that I ever mattered at all. 8 months of silence so complete it feels intentional, like they've all agreed to pretend Emily Carter was just a phase they went through, a temporary inconvenience they're better off without. I tell myself this is what I wanted: freedom from the endless cycle of giving and receiving nothing in return, independence from people who saw me as a solution to their problems rather than a person with problems of my own. But wanting freedom and wanting to matter aren't mutually exclusive, and that's the truth I'm still learning to swallow. In Havenbrook, I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always had her checkbook ready and her schedule clear for family emergencies. Here in Seaside, I'm just Emily, a woman who brings her own lunch to work, who knows her barista's name, who's slowly learning that mattering doesn't require martyrdom. At least, that's what I thought before yesterday's envelope arrived. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. mixed in with the usual stack of bills and grocery store circulars that comprise my simple Maine existence. I almost missed it wedged between a credit card offer and an electric bill, bearing the familiar slanted handwriting that used to grace birthday cards and grocery lists back when I was still considered family. My hands trembled as I recognized Mom's careful script spelling out my address. For a moment, hope flickered stupidly in my chest. Maybe they'd realized their mistake. Maybe someone had finally asked where Emily was during Sunday dinner, noticed the empty chair that used to be mine, wondered why their reliable problem solver had vanished without a trace. I waited until after dinner to open it, as if delaying the inevitable could somehow change what lay inside. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, and when I finally tore it open at 8:45 that evening, 2 items tumbled onto my kitchen table. The first was a glossy college acceptance letter addressed to my brother Jake, embossed with the seal of Ohio State University. "Congratulations," it proclaimed in cheerful blue letters, followed by enrollment details and freshman orientation schedules. I stared at it, feeling like an intruder viewing someone else's triumph. When had Jake even applied to college? When had he decided what he wanted to study? These were the kinds of milestones I used to be involved in, the family moments that used to include my opinion, my encouragement, my inevitable financial contribution. The second item was a handwritten note from Mom, folded neatly in half. I unfolded it with the kind of dread usually reserved for medical test results or tax audits. "Emily," it began, not "Dear Emily" or "Hi, sweetheart," just my name like a label on a file folder. "We hope you're doing well in Maine. Jake got into Ohio State and we're so proud. The enrollment deposit and first semester fees come to $14,000, and we need to send it by next Friday to secure his spot in the business program." I had to read that sentence 3 times before the audacity fully registered. Not, "How are you doing after 8 months of silence?" Not, "We miss you," or "Sorry we haven't called." Just a breezy assumption that I was doing well enough to be tapped for $14,000 like some sort of automated withdrawal. The note continued, "We know you're doing great up there with your consulting job, and Jake deserves the same opportunities you had. This is his chance for a real future, and we're counting on family to help make it happen. We've already told him you'd help with the initial costs since you're the one with the stable income now." My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the kitchen floor. The sound echoed through my small apartment like a gunshot, ceramic shards scattering across the linoleum I'd scrubbed by hand just that morning. They'd already promised Jake my money, before asking, before even acknowledging my existence for the better part of a year. They'd spent 8 months pretending I didn't exist, then resurfaced with their hands out like nothing had happened. The note's final paragraph was the cruelest cut. "We need this by next Friday, so please transfer the money to Dad's account as soon as possible. Jake's orientation is the following Monday, and he's so excited. This is what family does for each other. We support each other's dreams. Love, Mom." I sat in the spreading puddle of coffee, reading those words until they blurred together. Family, support, dreams. All concepts that apparently only applied when money was needed, not when daughters graduated with master's degrees or built new lives or spent months wondering if anyone even noticed they were gone. The worst part was the casual assumption that I would comply, the complete absence of any acknowledgement that they'd been silent for 8 months. No explanation for missing my graduation, no apology for the radio silence, no interest in how I'd managed to build a life without them. Just an expectation that I'd open my checkbook like I always had before. I thought about Jake, barely 18 and probably unaware that his college fund came with emotional strings attached. Did he even know they'd cut me out of the family orbit, or had they spun some story about my choice to move away, making me the villain in a narrative where they were just loving parents doing their best? The envelope lay empty on my table, its innocuous appearance belying the earthquake it had triggered in my carefully constructed peace. 8 months of healing, 8 months of learning to value myself, 8 months of believing I might actually matter to someone somewhere, all of it crumbling under the weight of their breathtaking entitlement. I swept up the coffee and ceramic. my hands steady now with a kind of cold clarity. They thought they could reappear whenever they needed something, treating me like a bank account with legs. They thought I'd absorbed their silence and come back grateful for any scrap of acknowledgement, even if it came with a $14,000 price tag. But as I dumped the broken pieces into the trash, I realized something had shifted. The desperate daughter who used to jump at their every demand had died somewhere in those 8 months of silence. What remained was someone they'd never bothered to meet, someone who'd learned her worth wasn't measured in dollar signs. The question now was what to do with that knowledge. The memories hit me like a physical blow as I sat staring at that demand for $14,000. Suddenly, I was back in that auditorium chair, May 15th of last year, scanning the crowd for familiar faces that never appeared. My graduation day, the day I'd earned my master's in business administration after 3 years of night classes and weekend study sessions, juggling coursework with a full-time job and the endless stream of family financial emergencies. I'd sent them the invitation 2 months early, highlighted the date on the calendar I'd mailed to Mom, even called to confirm they'd received everything. "Of course we'll be there, honey," Mom had said, her voice warm with what I'd foolishly mistaken for pride. "We wouldn't miss it for the world." The auditorium had been packed with families clutching flowers and cameras, parents beaming with obvious pride as their children's names were called. I'd saved 4 seats in the 3rd row, good seats, close enough for photos, positioned so they could see me clearly when I walked across that stage. I'd worn the dress Mom always said looked best on me, the navy blue one that brought out my eyes. At 2:15, 15 minutes before the ceremony began, I'd texted Dad, "Saved seats in Section B, row 3. Can't wait to see you all." No response. At 2:25, I'd called Mom's cell phone, straight to voicemail. At 2:28, Jake had finally answered his phone. "Oh, hey, Em," he'd said, his voice distracted, background noise suggesting he was somewhere busy and definitely not heading toward a graduation ceremony. "Yeah, about today. We ended up booking this last-minute trip to Chicago. There's this Cubs game Dad really wanted to see, and you know how hard it is to get good tickets." I'd stood in that crowded hallway, well-dressed families streaming around me, trying to process what he'd just said. The Cubs game. "Yeah, sorry. But graduations are pretty boring anyway, right? Just walking across a stage. We'll celebrate when you get back home." The line had gone dead, leaving me clutching my phone like a lifeline that had just snapped. I'd returned to those 4 empty seats and sat through the entire ceremony watching other people's families cheer, other people's parents cry with pride, other people's siblings hold up embarrassing homemade signs. When they called Emily Carter, I'd walked across that stage to polite applause from strangers, accepted my diploma with a smile that felt carved from stone, and posed for the official photographer with no one waiting to take pictures of their own. After the ceremony, I'd driven home alone, still in my graduation dress, and found them posting photos from Wrigley Field on Facebook. Dad grinning behind home plate, Mom and Jake wearing matching Cubs jerseys, all of them looking like they were having the time of their lives. The timestamp showed they'd been posted during my ceremony. That night, I'd sat in my childhood bedroom and calculated exactly how much I'd contributed to their lives over the years. The numbers had been staggering, even to me. $23,000 over 5 years. I'd kept meticulous records, initially out of some naive hope that they might pay me back someday, later out of a growing need to understand where my paycheck disappeared to each month. There was the $8,000 I'd given them when Dad's hours got cut at the factory, the $4,000 for Jake's senior year expenses, car repairs, prom, senior trip, the $3,000 when Mom needed dental work, the $2,000 for their vacation to Florida, the one they'd said they needed to reconnect as a family after a difficult year, the monthly $500 I'd been sending to help with household expenses, money that apparently freed them up for Cubs tickets and Chicago hotels. I'd covered emergencies and non-emergencies alike, never questioning whether they were making any effort to solve their own problems. I'd been their personal ATM, dispensing cash with a smile and receiving nothing but more requests in return. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the realization that I'd structured my entire adult life around their needs. I'd chosen to live at home through graduate school to help with expenses, turned down a better job offer in another state because they'd said they needed me close, spent my weekends driving Jake to activities instead of building my own social life. And when the most important day of my academic career arrived, they'd chosen a baseball game. Not even a particularly important baseball game, I'd checked later. The Cubs had lost to the Pirates, 6-3. Dad had paid premium prices to watch his team get crushed while his daughter achieved something none of them had ever accomplished. That night, I'd made the decision to move to Maine, not out of anger, exactly, but out of a sudden, crystal-clear understanding that I'd been pouring my life into people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. I'd given them everything I had, and when it came time for them to give me one afternoon, one moment of celebration, they'd chosen entertainment over their own daughter. I'd left Havenbrook 3 weeks later, not dramatically, not with ultimatums or angry confrontations. I'd simply packed my things, transferred to the consulting firm's main office, and started over. I'd thought they might call to ask why, might notice the absence of their reliable crisis solver. 8 months of silence had been my answer. Now, sitting in my main kitchen with their latest demand in front of me, I understood the true scope of their selfishness. They'd erased me from their lives the moment I stopped being useful, then reappeared the instant they needed something again. I wasn't their daughter. I was their emergency fund with a heartbeat. But I wasn't that person anymore, and it was time they learned the difference. The text message from my cousin Megan arrived 3 days after the envelope, just as I was finishing my morning coffee and trying to pretend that $14,000 demand wasn't eating away at my peace of mind. "Hey, Em, saw something online you might want to see. Check your email." Megan was my father's sister's daughter, one of the few family members who'd stayed in touch sporadically over the years. She lived in Columbus, close enough to Havenbrook to catch the local gossip, but far enough away to maintain some perspective on family drama. Her message came with a link and a simple note, "I'm sorry you're seeing it this way." My stomach dropped as I clicked the link from my laptop. It led to a GoFundMe page titled "Help Jake Carter Achieve His College Dreams," complete with a photo of Jake in his high school graduation cap and gown, grinning broadly at the camera. The description made my blood run cold. "Our family is reaching out to our community to help our youngest son Jake attend Ohio State University this fall. Jake has worked incredibly hard throughout high school, maintaining a 3.7 GPA while working part-time at the local grocery store. He's been accepted into OSU's competitive business program, but like many families, we're struggling with the rising costs of higher education. Jake's father works at the manufacturing plant, and his mother has been battling health issues that have impacted our family's finances. We're asking for help with the initial enrollment costs of $14,000 so Jake can secure his spot and begin this exciting journey. Any contribution, no matter how small, will help Jake build the future he's worked so hard for. Our family believes in the power of education and community support. Thank you for being part of Jake's success story." Below the description was a thermometer showing they'd raised $3,200 so far, with contributions from neighbors, teachers, and family friends. But what made my vision blur with rage wasn't the fundraising itself. It was the section labeled Major Contributors. There, in a neat list, were the names of everyone who donated more than $500, Aunt Linda, $800, the Millers from down the street, $600, Mom's book club, $700 collected as a group. Dad's co-workers had pooled together for $500. And at the bottom, in smaller text, was a line that made my hands shake. Anonymous major sponsor commitment pending $14,000. They'd already assigned my money, before asking, before even acknowledging I existed. They'd publicly committed my $14,000 to their crowdfunding campaign. I was listed as an anonymous sponsor, not even worthy of having my name attached to my own forced generosity. But the real knife twist came when I scrolled down to the photo gallery. There were pictures of Jake through the years playing baseball, working at his part-time job, receiving academic awards. There were family photos from various occasions, all of them recent enough that I should have been included. Except I wasn't. In every single picture where I would have originally appeared, I'd been carefully cropped out. There was the photo from Jake's 18th birthday party. I could see my arm around his shoulder, cut off at the edge of the frame. The family Christmas picture from 2 years ago, cropped so tightly it looked awkward, removing me completely while keeping everyone else in the shot. Most devastating was the picture from Jake's high school graduation, the event I'd attended just 2 weeks before my own ceremony. In the original photo, I'd been standing between Mom and Jake, all of us smiling proudly. In this version, there was an obvious gap where I'd been digitally removed. The background stretched unnaturally to fill the space where I used to exist. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd actively erased me from their family history, editing me out of their memories like I was some kind of embarrassing mistake they wanted to hide, while asking for my money. I scrolled through the comments, each one twisting the knife deeper. Such a wonderful family. Jake is so lucky to have such supportive parents. Your family values are inspiring. All these people praising my parents for their dedication to their son's future, completely unaware that the major funding was coming from the daughter they'd systematically erased from existence. One comment from Jake's girlfriend particularly stung. "It's so amazing how close your family is. Jake always talks about how much his parents sacrificed for him. You can really see the love. The love, the closeness, the sacrifice. All of it built on money extorted from the family member they decided didn't exist." I took screenshots of everything: the fundraising page, the cropped photos, the comments, the thermometer showing my $14,000 already accounted for. Each image felt like evidence in a trial I hadn't known I was building. Then I called Megan. "I was wondering when you'd see it," she said without preamble. "I've been watching this train wreck for a week, debating whether to tell you." "How long has it been up?" "Since last Monday, the day before they sent you that letter. I'm guessing." Her voice was tight with controlled anger. "Emily, I need you to know that not everyone in this family thinks what they're doing is okay. Some of us have been asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "Like where the hell you've been for the past 8 months, for starters, and why you weren't at Jake's graduation party, and why every time someone mentions your name, the conversation gets changed real quick." I closed my eyes, grateful that at least someone had noticed my absence. "What do they say when people ask?" "That you're doing your own thing in Maine, that you wanted space to focus on your career. They make it sound like it was your choice, like you're too busy and important to stay in touch with your family." The lies were almost worse than the erasure. They'd rewritten our family history, casting themselves as the loving parents of an ungrateful daughter who'd chosen career over family. Meanwhile, they were quietly counting on that same ungrateful daughter to fund their son's future. "Megan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I need you to know something. They didn't ask me for that $14,000. They demanded it. In a letter that came after 8 months of complete silence, and they'd already promised it to Jake before they even told me about it." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Those bastards," she finally whispered. "Emily, what are you going to do?" I stared at my laptop screen, at the photo gallery full of my cropped-out existence, at the comments praising my parents' devotion, at the anonymous sponsor line that reduced me to a nameless ATM. "I'm going to show them what happens when you erase the wrong person," I said. I waited until Thursday evening to make the call, giving myself time to prepare and them time to wonder why their reliable ATM hadn't immediately responded to their demand. By 7:30, I had my laptop open with the GoFundMe page displayed, my phone set to record, and a glass of wine within reach for courage. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice artificially bright. "Emily, honey, we were just talking about you. Did you get our letter?" The casual warmth in her tone, as if we'd spoken yesterday instead of 8 months ago, made my jaw clench. "I got it," I said, keeping my voice level. That's actually why I'm calling. Oh, good. I knew you'd want to help with Jake's future. He's so excited about Ohio State, and the business program there is supposed to be excellent. Almost as good as the one you went through. Almost as good. Even in asking for my money, she managed to diminish my achievements. Mom, before we talk about Jake's college fund, I have a question. Of course, sweetheart. What is it? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to unleash. Am I actually part of this family? The pause stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its artificial cheer. Emily, what kind of question is that? Of course you're family. Because 8 months ago, you all disappeared from my life. No calls, no texts, no emails, nothing. And now you resurface asking for $14,000 like nothing happened. Honey, you know how busy things get, and you moved so far away. You missed my graduation. Mom. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. You promised you'd be there, and instead you went to a Cubs game. Another pause. We had those tickets for months, and you had months to plan around my graduation too. I sent you the invitation in March. Emily, you're being unfair. That trip was important for your father. He'd been working so hard and more important than your daughter's master's degree graduation. Her voice shifted, taking on the defensive tone I remembered from childhood arguments. You know what? Yes, sometimes other things take priority. Your father needed that break, and frankly, graduations are just ceremonies. It's not like we missed anything meaningful. The casual dismissal of the most important day of my academic career hit like a physical blow. I'd expected deflection, maybe even guilt, but not this blatant minimization of my achievement. Not meaningful, I repeated slowly. My master's degree wasn't meaningful. Don't twist my words. Emily, you know what I meant. You got your diploma either way. We didn't need to sit in uncomfortable chairs for 3 hours to validate that. But you need me to validate Jake's future with $14,000. That's completely different. Jake is just starting out. He needs support. You're already established. You have a good job. I had a good job 8 months ago, too. Mom, I also had a family that apparently meant nothing to me since I was willing to walk away from it. You did walk away. You moved to Maine without discussing it with anyone. Stopped calling. Stopped visiting. I stopped calling. The disbelief in my voice was genuine. Mom, when exactly did you try to call me because my phone records show 0 calls from any of you for 8 months? You seemed like you wanted space. We were respecting your decision. What decision? I never said I wanted space. I moved for work and waited for my family to stay in touch. Instead, you all acted like I died. Her voice was getting sharper now, the mask of maternal warmth slipping entirely. Emily, this is exactly why we needed a break from you. You always make everything about you. You're so dramatic, so demanding of attention. Some of us have real problems to deal with. The words hung in the air like poison gas. I'd known this conversation would be difficult, but I hadn't expected her to be so openly cruel. Real problems, I said quietly, like needing $14,000 from your dramatic, attention-seeking daughter. This isn't about you, Emily. This is about Jake's future. This is about family supporting family when it matters. And where was that support when I needed it? Where was the family when I graduated, when I moved to a new state, when I spent 8 months wondering if anyone even noticed I was gone? You made your choice to leave. Don't blame us for respecting it. I made a choice to build a career. I didn't choose to be erased from family photos and ignored for 8 months. The silence stretched again, and I could almost hear her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. I don't know what you think you know, but I know about the GoFundMe page. Mom, I know you've already committed my money without asking me. I know you cropped me out of every family photo you posted. I know you've been telling people I chose to distance myself from the family. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. What do you want, Emily? I want to understand how you can erase me from your lives and then expect me to fund your son's future. Jake is your brother. And I'm your daughter, or at least I was, until you decided I wasn't worth acknowledging anymore. Look, I don't have time for this guilt trip. We need an answer about the money. Jake's enrollment deadline is tomorrow, and we've already told him he's going to college. The casual dismissal of my pain, the reduction of 8 months of heartbreak to a guilt trip, finally broke something inside me. Here's your answer. Mom, I said, my voice steady with newfound clarity. The Emily who would have given you that money disappeared 8 months ago, the same day you all decided she didn't exist. Don't be ridiculous. This is family business. No, I interrupted. Family business involves family members. I'm apparently just an anonymous sponsor you can tap when convenient. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking as I stopped the recording. The conversation had been even worse than I'd expected, but also exactly what I'd needed to hear. Any lingering guilt about what I was planning to do had just evaporated completely. They'd made their choice 8 months ago. Now it was time for them to live with the consequences. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time since moving to Maine. I wasn't physically ill, but I needed the day to do something I should have done months ago, document the truth. I spread everything across my kitchen table like evidence in a crime scene investigation. Bank statements going back 5 years, printed emails, text message screenshots, photos from family events, and the recorded phone call from the night before. The scope of manipulation, when laid out chronologically, was breathtaking. Starting with my laptop, I created a spreadsheet titled Financial History and began entering every transaction. $8,000 to cover Dad's reduced work hours in 2020, $4,000 for Jake's senior year expenses, $3,000 for Mom's dental work, $2,000 for their family bonding vacation to Florida, the one I wasn't invited on because someone needed to watch the house. The monthly payments were the most damaging $500 every month for 2 years to help with household expenses. 24 payments totaling $12,000, money that had apparently freed up their budget for Cubs tickets in Chicago hotels during my graduation weekend. $23,400 total, nearly $6,000 more than what they were now demanding for Jake's college. I moved on to the email evidence, dozens of requests over the years, each one framed as an emergency, each one promising it would be the last time, just until Dad's hours pick up again, just until Mom's health insurance kicks in, just until Jake graduates and gets a job. The pattern was always the same crisis: request, promise of repayment, silence until the next crisis. And somehow, I'd fallen for it every time, believing that being needed meant being loved. Then I tackled the photos. I'd saved copies of family pictures over the years, and comparing them to the versions on their GoFundMe page was like watching myself be systematically erased from history. Christmas morning 2023, the original showed me helping Jake open presents. The cropped version showed an awkward gap where I'd been standing. Easter dinner, 2022. I'd been edited out so cleanly it looked like I'd never existed. The most painful was Jake's high school graduation party. In my version, I'm standing between Mom and Jake, all of us laughing at something Dad said off camera. In their version, there's a strange empty space and Mom's arm reaching toward nothing, as if she's hugging a ghost. By 11:30, I had everything organized and digitized, but documentation wasn't enough. I needed a platform that would reach the people who mattered. My old high school friends still living in Havenbrook, family members who'd been questioning my absence, the community members contributing to Jake's college fund without knowing the full story. I set up my phone on a makeshift tripod and opened the camera app. For a moment, I stared at my reflection on the screen, remembering the confident graduate who'd walked across that stage alone 8 months ago. That woman had been defeated, confused, still hoping her family might come around. The woman looking back at me now was someone different, someone who'd learned that self-respect wasn't negotiable. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "My name is Emily Carter, and I want to tell you a story about family, money, and what happens when you become inconvenient to the people who raised you. I spoke for 20 minutes, walking through the timeline methodically. The years of financial support, the promises of repayment, the growing expectations that I'd always be available for the next crisis. My graduation day, sitting alone while they cheered for the Cubs. The 8 months of complete silence. The letter demanding $14,000. The GoFundMe page where I'd been listed as an anonymous sponsor for money I'd never agreed to give. I want to be clear, I said, looking directly into the camera. This isn't about the money, though $23,000 over 5 years isn't pocket change on a consulting salary. This is about being treated like a bank account instead of a daughter. This is about being erased from family photos while my money is still considered family property. I held up the printed screenshots of the cropped photos, explaining each one. This is me being removed from Jake's graduation party. This is me being edited out of Christmas morning. This is me disappearing from Easter dinner. But somehow, my wallet is still invited to family events. I talked about the phone call with Mom, playing key excerpts from the recording, her dismissal of my graduation as not meaningful, her claim that I'd chosen to distance myself, her reduction of 8 months of heartbreak to a guilt trip. I'm sharing this because I want people to understand what's really happening when you donate to Jake's college fund. You're not supporting a struggling family. You're enabling people who think love is conditional on financial utility. You're rewarding parents who erase their daughter from family history while expecting her to fund their son's future. I paused, looking directly into the camera again. To my family. If you're watching this, I gave you everything I had for years, and you threw me away the moment I stopped being useful. You can't erase someone and then expect them to pay for your mistakes. I ended the video by holding up the letter they'd sent, showing Mom's handwriting demanding $14,000. This is what I received after 8 months of silence. Not, how are you? Not, we miss you. Not, sorry we disappeared from your life. Just a bill for my brother's future, with my contribution already promised to strangers on the internet. When I finished recording, I sat in my quiet kitchen and uploaded the video to every social media platform I had: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I tagged mutual friends from high school, family members who might care about the truth, even some of Mom's book club friends who donated to the GoFundMe campaign. The caption was simple: 8 months of silence, then a demand for $14,000. This is what happens when family treats you like a bank account instead of a daughter. Within an hour, the views started climbing. Comments began appearing, some supportive, some shocked, some angry on my behalf. My phone buzzed with notifications as the video spread beyond my immediate network, shared by friends who'd been wondering where I'd gone, family members who'd suspected something was wrong, classmates who remembered the Emily who used to always help everyone. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I had 47 missed calls from Ohio numbers and a text from Megan. Holy shit, Emily, it's everywhere. The whole town is talking about it. I turned off my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow would bring consequences I couldn't predict. But tonight, for the first time in 8 months, I felt like I existed again. Not as someone's emergency fund or convenient problem solver, but as a person whose story mattered enough to tell. I turned my phone back on Saturday morning to find my world had exploded overnight. 137 missed calls, 412 text messages, notifications from every social media platform I'd ever used. My video had been viewed 28,000 times, shared across local Facebook groups, reposted on community message boards, and somehow even made it onto the Havenbrook High School alumni page. The comment section had become a battlefield. I always wondered why Emily stopped coming to family events. Now I know. Carol Carter should be ashamed of herself. I've known that family for 15 years. Wait, Emily's the one who helped my mom when she was sick last year. She sent flowers and paid for groceries. I had no idea her own family was treating her like this. This is heartbreaking. Emily was always the kindest person in our graduating class. But it wasn't just sympathy. The video had triggered something deeper in Havenbrook's tight-knit community. People were sharing their own stories of how my family had manipulated situations, how they'd always seemed to have financial emergencies despite Dad having steady work, how they'd noticed my absence from recent gatherings but accepted my parents' explanations without question. Mrs. Patterson, my old high school English teacher, had left a comment that made my chest tight. "Emily, I attended your graduation because I was so proud of what you'd accomplished. I looked for your family in the audience and couldn't understand why they weren't there. Now I understand, and I'm heartbroken for you." The momentum was building beyond anything I'd anticipated. Someone had created a hashtag, "Our Emily Deserves Better." Local news reporters were reaching out for interviews. The GoFundMe page's comment section had become an interrogation of my parents' motives. But the most devastating development came in a text from Megan at 10:15 that morning. "Emily, you need to see what's happening at Jake's orientation today. This is getting ugly." She'd sent me a link to a live stream from Ohio State's freshman orientation. Apparently, some enterprising journalism student had recognized Jake from my video and was broadcasting the arrival of incoming freshmen and their families. I watched in real time as my parents climbed out of their car in the university parking lot, Jake walking between them looking confused and increasingly uncomfortable. The chat on the live stream was brutal. "Is that the family from the viral video? Those are the parents who demanded $14K from their daughter they'd been ignoring. Jake looks like he has no idea what's happening. Poor kid. This isn't his fault, but his parents are monsters." As they walked toward the orientation building, I could see other parents and students recognizing them, pointing and whispering. Mom kept her head down. Dad's jaw was set in stubborn defiance, and Jake looked like he wanted to disappear into the pavement. My phone rang. Megan. "Emily, it's chaos here," she said without preamble. "I drove down to see what was happening, and half the town is talking about your video, the barber shop, the grocery store, even the church parking lot after morning service. People are furious." "How bad is it?" "Bad. The GoFundMe page is getting hammered. People are demanding refunds, asking how they can redirect their donations to you instead. And," she paused, "your parents' neighbors are talking about organizing some kind of intervention." An intervention. I sat down hard on my couch, suddenly realizing the magnitude of what I'd unleashed. This wasn't just my family's private dysfunction anymore. It had become a community reckoning. "Megan, is Jake okay? I never wanted him to get hurt by this." "That's the thing. Word is getting around that Jake had no idea about the money situation. Some of his friends are saying he thought you were just busy with work and that the family was paying for college through savings and loans. He apparently found out about the GoFundMe page the same day you did." Relief and guilt warred in my chest. Jake was innocent in this, a teenager who'd been lied to by our parents just like everyone else, but he was also collateral damage in a war I'd started. The live stream was still running, and I watched as my family emerged from the orientation building 2 hours later. Jake looked like he'd been crying. Mom's face was stone-cold angry. Dad kept checking his phone, probably reading the increasingly hostile comments on their fundraising page. As they reached their car, a small group of parents approached them. I couldn't hear the conversation, but the body language was clear. These were people demanding answers. Mom gestured aggressively. Dad stepped protectively in front of Jake, and within minutes they were climbing back into their car and leaving campus. Jake's orientation day, the moment that was supposed to launch his college career, had been destroyed by the consequences of his parents' choices. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emily, this is Jake. Can we talk?" My hands shook as I typed back, "Of course! Call me anytime." The phone rang within seconds. "Emily." Jake's voice was small, younger than his 18 years. "I don't understand what's happening. Everyone keeps asking me about money and videos and... Did Mom and Dad really ask you for $14,000? I closed my eyes, hating that I had to be the one to shatter his illusions. "Yes, Jake. They did. But they told me the money was coming from loans and savings. They said you were too busy with your new life to help with family stuff." I've been waiting 8 months for someone from our family to call me. Jake. Anyone. Even you." The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of lies unraveling. "They said you didn't want to be involved anymore, that you were focused on your career and didn't have time for us." I moved to Maine for work, but I never stopped wanting to be part of the family. I sent Christmas presents that were never acknowledged. I called and texted with no responses. I waited and waited for someone to reach out. "Oh, God," his voice cracked. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. When they told me about the GoFundMe thing, I asked why your name wasn't on it as a contributor, and they said you wanted to stay anonymous." "Jake, they cropped me out of family photos. They erased me from your graduation party pictures. Check the GoFundMe page, look at those photos, and tell me if you see anything wrong with them." I heard him typing, probably pulling up the page on his phone. The sharp intake of breath told me he'd found the evidence. "You're not in any of these pictures, but I remember you being there for everything." "I was there, Jake, until 8 months ago. I was there for everything. And then I wasn't, and nobody seemed to notice except to ask for money." When he spoke again, his voice was thick with tears. "What do I do now? Emily." Everyone at orientation was staring at us. People were asking Mom about the video, and she just kept saying it was all lies and manipulation. Dad looked like he wanted to hit someone. I stared out my window at the Maine coastline, at the life I'd built from scratch while my family erased me from theirs. Jake was a victim in this too, but he was also the only family member who'd bothered to call and ask for my side of the story. "You figure out who you want to be, Jake, independent of what they've taught you to expect from other people." The video had done exactly what I'd hoped it had, forced the truth into the light. But as I listened to my 18-year-old brother grapple with the reality that his parents were not who he thought they were, I realized that some victories cost more than you expect to pay. The fire was spreading now, beyond my control, consuming everything in its path, including the people I'd never meant to burn. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Jake's actual enrollment day, the day that should have been a celebration, had become ground zero for the complete collapse of my parents' carefully constructed narrative. I watched it all unfold from my apartment in Maine, 3 states away but connected through the relentless stream of social media updates, text messages from Megan, and local news coverage that had somehow picked up the story. The Havenbrook Herald had run a front-page article titled "Local Families Fundraising Controversy Divides Community," complete with screenshots from my video and quotes from neighbors who donated to Jake's college fund. The enrollment ceremony was supposed to begin at 10 o'clock. By 9:30, Megan was sending me play-by-play updates from the university's main quad. "Your parents just arrived. Jake looks mortified. There are literally people here with printouts of your bank records." At 9:45, someone brought a poster board with all the cropped family photos arranged in a timeline. "This is insane." At 9:58, "Your mom just tried to get security to remove the protesters, but they're not actually doing anything illegal. They're just existing, with evidence." The live stream from the student journalist was still running, and I found myself watching my family's final humiliation in real time. Jake stood between my parents like a prisoner, his face pale and drawn. Every few minutes, someone would approach them, sometimes aggressively, sometimes just curiously, and my parents would huddle closer together, their body language screaming defensiveness and barely contained rage. The actual ceremony became a secondary drama to the spectacle my family had created. Other families gave them a wide berth, parents whispering to each other while stealing glances at the people who demanded $14,000 from a daughter they'd erased from existence. The breaking point came during the welcome address. As the dean spoke about family support and new beginnings, someone in the crowd I couldn't see who held up a printed screenshot of the GoFundMe page with my anonymous major sponsor commitment pending designation clearly visible. The gesture rippled through the audience like a wave, with people turning to stare at my parents. Mom finally cracked. She stood up abruptly, grabbing Jake's arm and hissing something at Dad. The 3 of them made their way toward the exit, but not quickly enough to avoid the cameras and phones that followed their retreat. Jake looked back once at the ceremony he was leaving behind, his face a mask of humiliation and loss. By 11:15, it was over. My parents had fled the campus, taking Jake with them. The enrollment ceremony continued without them, but the damage was complete. The community had spoken, and their verdict was clear: what my parents had done was unforgivable. The aftermath came in waves throughout the day. The GoFundMe page was suspended pending investigation of fraud claims. 3 local news stations picked up the story. Jake's high school guidance counselor reached out to help him apply for emergency financial aid that didn't depend on his parents' manipulation. Most surprisingly, Aunt Linda, my father's sister, called me directly for the first time in 2 years. "Emily," she said without preamble, "I owe you an apology. We all do. Your mother fed us a line about you being too busy and successful to stay in touch with small-town family. I should have called you myself instead of believing her stories." "I never wanted it to go this far," I said, and I meant it. I just wanted people to know the truth. The truth needed to come out. What they did to you, honey, that's not family. That's exploitation. As the sun set over my Maine coastline, I sat on my small balcony with a glass of wine, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. My phone had finally stopped buzzing with notifications. The fire I'd started had burned through everything it could consume, leaving nothing but ashes and truth in its wake. Jake texted me at 8:30. "I'm staying with a friend tonight. I can't look at them right now. Thank you for telling me the truth, even though it hurt." I texted back, "You're always welcome here if you need space to figure things out. I love you. Jake." "I love you too. I'm sorry they made me part of hurting you." Those words, the first genuine family affection I'd received in 8 months, made me cry harder than anything else that had happened. Jake wasn't responsible for our parents' choices, but he'd been caught in the crossfire of their consequences. My parents never called, not to apologize, not to explain, not even to rage at me for destroying their carefully constructed facade. Their silence was somehow more definitive than any conversation could have been. They'd shown their true colors to an entire community and apparently had nothing left to say. 3 days later, Jake started classes at Ohio State using emergency financial aid and student loans. The business program welcomed him with extra support, recognizing that he'd been a victim of his parents' manipulation rather than a willing participant. He called me after his first day, sounding lighter than he had since orientation. "Emily, I think I'm going to be okay. It's going to be hard, but I think I can do this on my own." "I know you can," I said. "And Jake, you're never on your own. Not really." As for my parents, they became pariahs in their own community. The neighbors who'd once borrowed sugar and shared gossip now crossed the street to avoid conversation. Mom's book club quietly removed her from their group. Dad's co-workers stopped inviting him to after-work drinks. They'd burned every bridge that mattered, and the isolation they'd once imposed on me had become their own reality. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a strange kind of peace. I'd told my truth, and the world had listened. Sometimes that's all you can do, speak your reality, and let others decide what it means to them. The woman who'd once begged for scraps of acknowledgement from people who saw her as a bank account was gone. In her place was someone who understood that love isn't supposed to come with withdrawal slips, and family isn't supposed to edit you out of existence when you stop being convenient. I was free. Finally, completely, devastatingly free. And for the first time in my adult life, that freedom felt like enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonates with anyone who's ever felt like they were more valued for what they could provide than for who they were as a person. Please let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to connect with others who understand this journey. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own thoughts about family, boundaries, and finding the courage to speak your truth. Your story matters too.